When they got to the door of the apartment, there was a gunshot. And you can clearly hear it on the body cam. So the police get to outside the apartment.
Okay. Right.
They're ready to just go in.
Yeah.
And you can just hear a pop.
Okay.
And the police officer's like, was that what I thought it was?
Just a quick disclaimer, the content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, crime scenes and other disturbing material. Listener discretion is advised.
This episode is sponsored by Think Forensic.
Think Forensic are a one-stop shop for all things forensic science and crime solving. They hold experience days, as well as corporate events, team building events, and general education for primary school right the way up to university level, as well as other events and consultancy. There's also a shop where you can get your hands on all things crime solving, from evidence gathering to packaging and collecting evidence, as well as other forensic science equipment.
For more information or to book on an experience day, please visit the website. Hi everyone, and welcome back to episode 15 of the Grave Secrets podcast. We're your hosts, I'm Annie.
And I'm Beth. So in today's episode, we're actually going to cover two cases in one episode. Lots of information to get through, obviously. They're both just as significant, as important as each other, which goes without saying. But the reason that we're doing two in one is because of the links to social media within both cases.
Yeah. And if you are just listening today, I don't know if you'll notice if you're watching as well, but I have been quite ill this week. So I've been written off, haven't I, really, for the entire week.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it was. I did a COVID test because I thought, oh God, is it COVID? Then I thought, is COVID still a thing?
You sounded awful on the voice notes.
And then I was voice noting Beth, and we were meant to be working together on Wednesday, and I had to call in sick at work. And I don't think I've ever done that. I'm sure Sue will have said while you were sat there, like, I don't think she's ever rang in sick or anything. But don't you ever get that feeling, a bit off topic, but when you are really ill, I was thinking, oh my God, like, what if they think I'm faking it?
I know.
Or what if they don't believe me? And then I was like, why would you not believe me? Like, I'm actually ill.
You sounded awful. Did I not tell you about the time that, because I get like that when I'm ill, but there was one time, and I'd not been working with Think Forensic for that long, and I'd got a dodgy tummy, right? But I was that convinced, like you do, that they wouldn't believe me. I sent Rhea a voice note of my stomach gurgling.
It's mad, isn't it? Because, why would you, like, not have believed me? Like, I'd messaged Rhea, and Rhea was like, oh my God, like, I hope you get better soon, and whatever, and then I'd spoke to you.
And they all know, we all know each other so well. Like, they know that we wouldn't lie about something like that. But I still, and Rhea was just like, oh, thanks for that.
Yeah,
like,
thanks, get well soon.
Yeah, she's like, I did believe you.
I did, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, oh my God, what if they don't believe that? I thought, I've never rang in, I think I've rang in sick once in, 15 years of working for the company. Like, no, of course they believe me. But anyway, so I am like near enough back to normal now. I went back to the gym yesterday, but my voice is still quite croaking. I'm still like very bunged up, even though it's like 28 bloody degrees outside and I've got a cold. I was like, for God's sake.
So it's hay fever.
Yeah. So we'll just get through these next two episodes. I'm going to sound rough, but I've pre-warned you. So yeah, back to the case.
Okay. So these two cases are two in which, as I've mentioned, social media was really at the core of the events which then took place. Recently, we discovered more about and discussed the dark web, which has actually become our most watched / listened to short, hasn't it?
Crazy, yeah. I think it's well over 15k now on TikTok. Anyway, I'm not sure on Instagram, but
it was just like the title was just the dark web, wasn't it? So whether or not it's just that, and then it's kind of taken off from there. But there's just a natural, intrinsic interest and appetite.
People are curious, aren't they? They're very curious about it,
and they just want to know how it works and how people get that sucked in to something like that.
Yeah.
So this episode isn't dark web related, but it's different elements and different aspects of social media and the ways in which it can be pivotal within a case, realistically.
So there's actually a couple of TV programs out at the moment which cover sort of the social media side of things. So there's the social media murders, and there is TikTok murder gone viral. So they all cover cases that are basically social media based. And I just think with us all being sort of that, I don't know anyone that's not got social media anymore.
Well, this is the thing. Even if you are kind of just a bit of a voyeur on it and you don't post anything, a lot of people still have it to some extent, whether or not you just look at tweets or whether or not you like it for Instagram photos.
I feel like especially TikTok, where you can just scroll and scroll and scroll and you don't ever have to post anything.
It's just part of our routine. For most people, it's a part of our routine. And I think the fact that it can then go so horribly wrong and the depths in which these platforms can affect people's lives is what we are going to talk about today.
Yeah, and it is actually very dangerous as well on social media in general, isn't it? I mean, we've done, I don't know if we've covered cases before on stalking through social media or if I've just watched those.
Well, you did mention in one of the episodes that we covered about not posting when things actually happen.
In real time, because of stalking.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it is a lot more dangerous than what people think at face value.
Yeah. And especially for makes us sound old, the younger generation now. Because there's that many different platforms that you can communicate with people on. I mean, MSN, back in our day, it's not like you'd connect with a randomer and then start chatting.
I don't know, because I remember MSN being like, you'd come on, you'd get home from school, you'd log on and you'd talk to your friends and you could do the little nudge thing. And if someone you fancied was online, you could go offline, come back on, and it'd say, if you've come back online, you've come back online, you've come back on, get their attention. But I do remember my friends talking to sort of older guys on there from different locations. And do you remember the ASL, age, sex, location? And, we were probably 12 and it was ASL 16, such and such UK. So I don't know. I just feel
probably always been there, just in different.
Looking back now, you think, oh my God, that was probably quite dangerous, because that probably wasn't a 12-year-old boy on the other side of that. But yeah, I feel like now it is easier.
Yeah, because now it's even with Xbox and stuff like that. I mean, I don't game, but I know that you can be invited into a party and then you're speaking to other people on headsets and things like that. So yeah, it's all very...
and the people who play Xbox are quite wide age range, aren't they, as well? So you've got kids that play it and, sort of 12, 13, 14-year-olds. But then you've got grown men who game and they like to sit on their Xbox. So those two people could be communicating in general, couldn't they? So I do find it a bit weird, all the stuff. But then we had stuff like... what was that one that came across and you not match with people, they pop up on the screen.
I was I know that.
Is it Amigo?
Oh, yeah, Meagle.
That just random has popped up, didn't they, on there?
Yeah.
And I don't know how long that's been around or if it's still a thing.
No, I feel because then there was chat roulette and that was a similar thing, wasn't there? There was a couple of different variations.
So I feel looking back now, that is actually quite dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, massively.
You're at whatever age we were and you're let's go on here and match on not match, pop up on Amigo. And you could see anything on there.
Yeah.
The stuff that you could see wow,
Yeah.
So anyway, that could be a whole new episode.
So it's always been there. But again, when you're young, it's kind of that naivety and the excitement of it. Yeah. That even if you think, oh, this is a bit dangerous.
Looking back now, it sounds worse.
And it's still fun.
Yeah.
And so you don't really think about what could happen.
Yeah.
Because you're just thinking about the initial gratification, isn't it? It's the initial fun that you're having.
Yeah. So which case do we want to go with first? I think you go with your case first.
All right, I'll go with mine.
Yeah.
So mine is the case of 15-year-old Alex Rodda. And Alex was 15 at the time that he was killed. He was murdered. But we're going to talk about Alex himself before we talk about any of the events that unfolded. Again, we've watched different documentaries, clips, stuff like that. Again, social media was a big part of Alex's life, so there are snippets of videos and photos that he'd posted. But I just want to give you an idea of him as a person from as much like kind of quotes from friends and family as possible that I could find. So, as I've said, Alex was 15. He was just at secondary school. He went to Holmes Chapel High School, and that's in Cheshire. So it was Knutsford in Cheshire that kind of everything takes place, but that's where Alex was from.
Not too far away from us again, is it?
No. In fact, it was only a few weeks ago that we were down around that area.
Yeah.
And Alex was a real character. His mum described him, and his friends described him as a real character. And it kind of reminded me a bit of Brianna.
Yeah.
In the fact that
yes,
they're
it did
both
with
quite
me, yeah.
young, but they felt confidence in who they were as a person.
And confident in the family, to talk to the family about things as well. It was like they both had a close relationship with, especially the mum, didn't they?
Yes. So Alex's parents had divorced, and Alex then lived with his mum, Lisa, but was still really close to his dad and his brother. And funnily enough as well, this goes to show what kind of person he was. Alex's dad was the landlord, or is a landlord of a pub.
Right.
And Alex has said that he wanted to take over the pub one day because he enjoyed the people element and kind of people coming and going.
Yeah, he did seem really sociable and seemed to have like a lot of friends in general, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely. And his friends will become pivotal in this case. So his mum talks about how he was confident. He was 6'2" as well. So
I didn't realise that. Yeah. So from the photos, I wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah, so he was super tall for his age. And then he had this large personality. And so he was really well known within school, across social media. And his mum, Lisa, said it was actually when he was just 13 that he'd come out as gay.
Right.
So he actually just went into the kitchen and said, "Mum, I've got something to tell you. I'm pretty sure that I'm gay."
Yeah. And she said she'd sort of known a bit before, didn't she? She had an idea she said he was always quite like feminine when he was younger, and they were showing the videos and stuff. So
yeah, and
I feel like she sort of expected that conversation at some point.
And it was really lovely because like his dad said that he was just proud of him for being able to talk about it. It was who he was as a person. And like most parents, all his dad was worried about was any backlash that he might face, and any homophobia. But he just got on with it. And discovering who he was, I think, was a big part of why he liked social media. Yeah. Because it's a way to express yourself. So for a lot of it, it was like videos of him and his friends dancing to songs. It was singing along to stuff. He was kind of referencing, I saw it one and it was like a reference to like RuPaul and Drag Race and stuff like that. So it just seemed like a really freeing, probably, way of him being able to express himself. So this is where his group of friends come in, because again, they spoke a lot and so highly of their best mate. Alex had a really core group of friends. They were all a group of girls, and they described him as being, like I said, a massive character, really loved his phone, always had his phone on him, and he'd always have like a portable charger, or it'd already be fully charged when they went out anywhere, because he wanted to capture everything. Yeah. And they'd actually got him and another of his friends had got jobs in the same pub, and I think he was the pot washer maybe, and she was one of the waitresses. Yeah. And there's clips of them again, like
it's
just
nice,
in the back
isn't it, that they all like work together and stuff. Yeah.
So his friends were a big group. It was Ellie, Molly, Georgia, Esme, Brogan, Charlotte and Yasmin, and I hope I'm not leaving anyone out there, but they seem to be kind of the core,
the main group of friends.
Yeah. They admired him for being so open and honest and gregarious, but he did suffer homophobic slurs from other people at school, and he did get the rough end of the stick for just being himself.
It's hard at school, isn't it? With that age, I feel like at that age, kids can be horrible.
Yeah, and I think at that age as well, now, whenever, like, as adults, when you are really honest about who you are and unapologetic for it, a lot of other adults think, wow, I wish I could be more like that. And I've never had that confidence. When you have that confidence at school, people just think that you are a bit of a cocky nightmare.
You're too out there of thing.
Yeah, it's almost like you're too much and it might be a put on act. But actually, he'd just figured out who he was and he was quite happy to say so early on. But that group of girls really stuck up for him.
His dad said, didn't he, on one of the interviews, like, I'm so glad that he had that tight-knit group of the girls around him to protect him, to stick up for him and help him out when he was in these situations.
And they did seem like the kind of girls that would just be like, oh, shut up.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you definitely need a group of girls like that to back you up, don't you? Especially at school.
Yeah. So being only 15, like we've mentioned, there's a lot that happens on social media and it becomes part of your routine, but there's also a lot of opportunities that then open up.
Yeah.
And Alex had actually started talking to an older man, via social media. So that's where the events begin to unfold. So what I'm going to now talk about is this relationship that unfolded. So Alex had told quite a few of his friends that he was talking to this older guy and kind of wanted to get their opinions on it.
You do though, don't you, with your friends? If you're single and you start talking to someone, especially when you're younger, you're like, oh, look at this person that I'm talking to or whatever. Like, it's just what you do, isn't it? Like you do sometimes, don't you? You'd be like, oh, have a look. Like,
you'll
look
never
at this
guess.
photo. Yeah, look at this.
And funnily enough, he'd done exactly that, and they'd said, let me see a photo, and they were like, no, because you might not like him.
Yeah.
And you do that, don't you?
Yeah.
It's all very exciting. And
there's never a good photo to show.
And apparently he'd brought it up in quite a light-hearted manner, but was just excited about, the potential probably of whatever this could be. So it was an 18-year-old called Matt Mason that he'd actually started talking to. And Matt Mason had attended the same school as Alex, but he'd left. So because he was 18, he'd left the school. They didn't live in the same village. So there was kind of no reason for them to necessarily bump into each other.
Yeah, because Matt would have been in like year 11 when he was in year 8, wouldn't he? So it's 3 years is quite a big difference, isn't it?
And I think this Matt Mason was at agricultural college, so that was probably somewhere else. So it's not like they'd have really seen each other. But they struck up initially conversation via Snapchat.
Right.
So they were talking on Snapchat. And I think for quite a while, he'd probably seen Matt Mason on maybe Facebook or whatever. But it wasn't until quite a lot further down the line that he actually added him as a friend or started following him on Instagram.
Right, so they kept it on Snapchat fully to start with.
Yeah, so it was just on Snapchat. They were talking, and one of his friends, I think it was Georgia, that said she saw some of the texts, like Alex showed her the texts, and they were flirty. It wasn't just like mates. Obviously, they didn't know each other as mates, but it was flirty. There was kisses, there was, stuff like that. They were talking about each other in a flirty way rather than just
a friendly way. And as well, like, I feel like people tend to lean towards Snapchat more because they think that all the messages are gone, they can disappear, but then not if the other person saves them. Like in this situation, you can show them to someone, can't you?
So again, Alex had asked I think it was Georgia, because she was the same age as Matt Mason.
Right.
So she was in his year at school. And she said it was always a little bit odd. She said, didn't think anything of it really, but there were certain things that you thought like, oh yeah, that was
bit weird.
Odd. So one instance was where he was getting really worked up about something in school, in a class, and he kept like balling his hands up and getting really, really angry. And then the teacher had been like, you need to calm down. And they all thought like, oh, he's got really angry out of nowhere kind of thing. But none of them really knew him. They'd not like hung out with him or anything. So Alex is just really excited. He is enjoying getting to know someone. And it was his first kind of relationship, or the beginning of what might be a relationship. They're talking pretty incessantly, day in, day out. And that is a big, exciting...
I was going to say, it's quite exciting, isn't it?
Yeah. And even if you know you're gay, you might not have, you won't have had any experiences with that necessarily. So knowing that you're attracted to men, but then not having any ability to explore it, when something like this comes along, of course you're going to be interested in seeing where it then leads.
Yeah.
And it then did lead to, from flirty messages to then sexting. So they then began to sext, and Matt Mason had actually sent nudes of himself and videos of himself to Alex.
Yeah, one of his friends said that there was a lot of those type of messages from Matt, literally at 1.1 every day.
Yes.
Like sending photos, which is quite extreme, isn't it, really, when you look back at that?
Yeah. And it's one of those where, like, maybe if it's in the right circumstance when you're having a conversation, but I can't imagine that they were all mid-conversation. It sounds like they were just sent.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the impression I got as well.
So it was all going as well as maybe it could have been.
There's nothing to compare it to at this point either, is there?
Yes.
So you don't know when it's your first relationship, there's nothing to say, yeah, this is right, this is wrong, this is how it should be, this is how it shouldn't be.
No.
So I feel like that as well could have been a bit of a factor in this.
But this is where it starts to become interesting, because there was an element of being secretive. So I don't think necessarily for Matt, really. For Alex, really. He told his friends about it. He was excited about it. But there was a certain instance where Alex's mum had come back from work and she found the door locked, which isn't usually the case within their house, if Alex is in. And she noticed a big pair of, like, farmer's work boots out the door. And she walked in the house and Matt Mason was in her house with Alex. She kind of said, "What's he doing here?" Alex hadn't told his mum, which was unusual because usually they share everything. And Alex kind of said, "Oh, don't worry about it, Mum. He's just kind of popped in. He's just passing,
yeah.
And he's now going to leave." And she said, "I don't know what it was, but I just got the feeling that you couldn't trust this Matt Mason," and she didn't want him in their house.
Mother's first impressions are normally always right.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Annoyingly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they had met in person, but then quite quickly after having met, this is when Alex then started following Matt Mason on Instagram and then saw that Matt Mason had a girlfriend.
Wow.
And he'd had a girlfriend and been with her for 2 years.
So the whole time.
And again, it was flirty. It's not like it was anything innocent. Matt Mason has been starting a relationship with Alex, knowing full well that he's
got a girlfriend.
Yeah, already got a girlfriend. So Alex, again, because of the confidence that he has, confronts him, says straight away to Matt, "Hang on a minute, you've got a girlfriend. I didn't know this. It's not on, it's not acceptable. I've got evidence that you are in this
with me."
Kind of, yeah. So don't deny it, but you need to tell her, otherwise I'm going to tell her because it's not fair on her.
Yeah.
At which point Matt said, "No, don't do it, I'll tell her. But from what we can gather, that didn't happen.
Of course it didn't happen.
Initially.
Yeah.
At this stage, Alex then again confronts Matt maybe 2 weeks later and says, "Have you spoken to her?" He says no, and Matt then actually did message the girlfriend.
Right.
Messaged the girlfriend himself and just said, "Look, nothing's happened, but I think you should know it's not fair on you," and just sent an honest message.
Yeah.
She then obviously spoke to Matt Mason about it, and Matt Mason ended up convincing his girlfriend that Alex was lying, that he'd never met Alex, and that, it was just a younger
Yeah. So you think in
boy.
this situation, you could sort of think with Matt Mason being 18, was he gay and he wasn't out yet and he wasn't ready to come out to his family. So, that was the situation he was in and you wouldn't want to be forced to come out. But then it's not right on a girl if she's being just used as a front for the family,
exactly.
just so that they think that he's got a girlfriend.
And 2 years is a long time, especially for like a young relationship. You do get embroiled in their life, don't you?
Yeah.
So it was, and again, if maybe he was gay but didn't want to be outed, maybe then you would have split up with a girlfriend and said like, right, okay, maybe I'll just take this time to work out. But that's probably a more mature way of thinking about it.
Yeah, but then he was 18. It's not like he was 15, was it?
Not.
And if Alex
you grow a lot in that space of time.
But I feel like if Alex could act mature in that situation, then Matt was older, so he surely could have not. It's hurting other people's feelings, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got to think of other people. And it seems like Matt Mason didn't ever once consider anyone else.
No.
So it then got to the point where Matt Mason became even more selfish. And this is, I think it was already a manipulative relationship.
Yep.
He'd already been telling Alex that he didn't want anyone to know about it. There was, again, inundating with these images that were explicit, and Alex is only 15. And at this stage now, so the girlfriend has been made aware of it, but she's then been told not to believe Alex. And to back up that lie, Alex then says, sorry, I keep getting confused. Matt then says to Alex, if I pay you, will you keep this quiet?
Wow.
Yeah. So initially it was £50, sent it to Alex and said, keep it quiet because, I've got my girlfriend back on side and I don't want to muck it up.
Okay. But then did he carry on? Did Matt carry on then with Alex?
Yes, so they were still communicating. But then, because they were still communicating, Matt just kept sending money over and over. Hush money. And at this stage, when you are sending explicit images to a child, when you are telling them not to tell anyone, when you are paying them money, that is grooming.
I was going to say that, all those together. I mean, I know Alex was pretty mature for his age, but he is still underage. He's still under 16.
He's underage, and for the amount of maturity that he had in himself, this whole experiencing being gay, there's knowing you're gay, and then there is having these first experiences as a child, as someone that is gay. And he'd never had a safe place, it seems, to explore that, because the first encounters he's had have been grooming from Matt Mason. So this went on, and there was close to £2,000. Molly, his friend, saw some of the transactions, and it was actually close to £2,000 that Matt Mason had sent over different periods.
I mean, I know
time.
that Matt Mason was working, but even if you're working, like I'm working, and for me to just send someone £2,000 is a lot of money.
So quite a wealthy family. They were known in the young farmers community.
Okay.
And it sounds like Matt liked cars, and again, that's another thing. Matt could drive.
Yeah.
So for Alex, it was like, well, we can go wherever we want.
It's appealing, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing better than like going to McDonald's with, your mates or someone that you wanting to get to know. So that was how the relationship had unfolded and kind of where it was at the time. But as you say, this relationship was still continuing. They were still speaking to each other.
Yeah.
And that's where we then come to the event. So on the 12th of December in 2019, at about 5:45, Matt had said to Alex that he wanted to take him out for some food. They'd go out for food, they'd go to a restaurant, but that he had a special place that he wanted to take Alex to, and it was a special place in a field. Right. Alex thought it was like daft, but obviously felt special and was excited about going out for food. And, you know, to him, that was probably quite a big deal because Matt's been telling him to keep it quiet, but now they are going out in public.
To be seen.
Be seen.
Yeah.
So he was probably super excited and was really excited because he then FaceTimed friends.
Yeah.
And told them that he was going out with Matt and that he was then going to stay at one of the girls' houses. So they kind of knew what was happening. And he'd then spoken to his mum and said that he was going to stay at the girls' houses.
Yep.
So this is about 5:45. He'd even mentioned to one of the girls that Matt had said, he wants to take me to this special place in a field. And they'd kind of had a bit of a joke about it because they were like, well, what's special
in a field? Yeah.
So they had kind of joked about it and that had been mentioned. By 9, his mum, again, had been out for food. She got home and she'd not heard from Alex and he wasn't at home.
So it was probably quite unusual with him knowing that he's got his phone with him all the time, knowing he's always on his phone.
Yeah.
To then not hear from him is probably a little bit strange for his mum as well.
And again, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, you'd be thinking that when it gets to 9, you might have heard, even if he's saying, like, I'm going to stay for another hour, or I've got to George's house or wherever.
Yeah, or we're going to bed, or we've got back,
But heard nothing. So Lisa knew something was wrong straight away. And at that point, she had the girls round at their house all the time, so she knew them really well as well, and actually texted them to ask whether or not they were with him, they'd heard from him. And she then discovered that his phone was dead. She then rang him and rang him a few times and the phone was dead.
Again, that's weird because you said he comes out with a portable charger all the time. He makes sure he's got everything on 100%. He's documenting everything. And if you are documenting everything in general in your life, he'll have loads of Insta stories, loads of Snapchat stories to show where he is. And if that just goes off radar.
Yeah, odd. Yeah. And equally, if you're at your mate's house, I'm always nicking my mate's chargers to charge my phone.
Yeah.
So, she knew by 9 p.m. that something wasn't right. And very quickly then when she'd spoken to the girls thought that something was wrong. They'd not heard from him. And they then decided to post it on Facebook.
So I'm guessing the mum didn't know that he had been out with Matt Mason, but his friends obviously did. Yeah.
So they put something out on Facebook and that's where straight away they had cause for concern, or even more so than they already had. Because quite quickly, in reaction to this post about him potentially being missing and did anyone know where he was or had heard from him, they started receiving comments from a Russian username.
Yeah, this was really strange.
Yeah. So it was a Russian username and they were saying, we've got the boy, there was, again, homophobic slurs, he's in the back of our van, we've got 5 potential buyers for him, and you're never going to see him again. And all of these comments were just coming through. As
a parent, like, I can't even imagine when you see something like that about your child, the pure panic of not being able to get in touch with him in the first place, and then thinking, oh God, someone's got him who is homophobic, who's saying they're going to sell him. Like, God, you'd be in a spin, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Interestingly, Lisa, his mum, said straight away she didn't kind of take it didn't really affect her because she just strongly believed that it was trolls. She didn't believe that it was legitimate.
Yeah.
Whereas Alex's father said that he did. It was like a lead. You're going to try and cling on to any potential information that you've got.
Yeah.
And he said, and they did take it seriously. At this point, they'd called the police and had told the police about everything that was unfolding.
Yeah.
And Alex's dad had even said, look, I know he's not been gone for long, but we know that something isn't right.
Yeah.
His brother was then going out with the girls in the car and just going to places that they think that Alex
just
might
looking
have gone.
anywhere.
Just trying to find him. Again, the girls straight on social media, they were trying to find, like you say, any Snapchat stories. He had put one on of him in a car, and so they were trying to work out where he was when he'd taken the photo.
Yeah, because on Snapchat you can actually have your location on as well, can't you? So, like, if he would have had his location on, but would he have turned it off because he was going out with him, and he might not have wanted people to see where he was. Yeah.
And it then became that this Russian username started insulting other of Alex's friends as well.
Yeah.
Now, we could do a case on this in its own because this is a crime. It turned out that it was someone trolling the family, and it was actually someone at their school.
Wow.
That had been
horrible.
Sending all of these messages.
I don't know how someone could do that in such a serious situation. Like, what goes through your mind to think, I'm not even just trolling someone in general about the way they look or whatever. This is a missing person at this point.
Yeah. And just like, Alex's dad said, they wasted time thinking about this.
But then if you wouldn't have followed that lead, would you be thinking, oh God, I've not followed it up? Like, could it be something? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Either way, you've got...
Yeah, you can't rule it out. So by about 11 o'clock, all of his friends are aware of what's going on. They're trying to work out where he might have happened. Again, because it's now on social media, some people are saying, because he was known quite kind of in places all over. He was known in Manchester, Bolton. There was lots of different
Liverpool as well,
like lots of different places he had connections to. So they were trying to explore like all potential avenues of where he'd have got to. But ultimately, they kept trying to contact him and couldn't. So they knew that wherever he wasn't
something's
safe.
Wrong. Yeah.
By about 11, the girls had then spoken to Lisa and told them that Alex was meant to be meeting Matt. And she said straight away she knew that it was to do with Matt. And again, she then said that that's why she didn't think it was anything to do with this person that was trolling them.
Yeah.
Because she was convinced that it was something to do with Matt. So at about 11, Georgia actually messaged Matt Mason. And she said, look, I know you were meant to be meeting Alex. Where is he now? What's gone on? At which point he did reply... but he then said that he'd seen Alex, but he'd dropped him off in Holmes Chapel, which again was like a local area, and that Alex had said that he was off to meet people in Manchester at about 8 p.m.
Right.
But again, you're not going to go shopping. And they were like, well, who would he be meeting at 8 p.m. in Manchester?
And if he told his friends that he was meeting Matt Mason, why wouldn't he have told his friends that he was meeting people in Manchester?
It doesn't add up. And equally, Alex is really excited about this relationship. So why would he then schedule to do something else later?
When he was excited to go for food,
he'd want the whole night with Matt Mason. He wouldn't want to be...
Cut it short.
Yeah. So that is when... Again, Matt Mason had then said, I've dropped him off and I don't know where he is. At this point, they still weren't convinced that Matt was telling the truth. So by 12 o'clock, Molly then rang Matt Mason.
Right.
So at first they've just texted him. Now Molly rings him and he then said, look, I don't know where he is. Yes, I saw him, but I dropped him off and kind of stuck to that initial story that he'd told Georgia. Lisa, Alex's mum, then said to the girls, right, give me his number and I am going to speak to him. She then texted him and he actually rang her. He rang her back pretty much straight away and said that he had dropped Alex off in Holmes Chapel at 6 p.m. and then he... hadn't heard from him, but then offered to actually go out and help look for Alex.
Wow.
Yeah. And Lisa said, even though that should have been comforting,
it wasn't.
Then she knew that something was wrong. They then informed the police of this connection.
Yep.
And this lead. And the police actually then text Matt and said, we're trying to locate a potential friend of yours. Do you have any information?
I bet, though, he was just trying to keep the story the same for everyone and just try and make himself sound as innocent as possible. And by offering to help, he probably thought he was making himself sound innocent, helpful, cooperating with the investigation.
Well, this is the thing, because he said, apparently he'd said, like, I'm just at a pub nearby, so I can come and help look for him. Yeah.
What did the mum say? Did she say yeah or no or?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't know, but I assume.
She just said
she didn't want to. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's because I don't even know what you'd say in that situation.
No.
Because you suspect that person, but then they're offering to help. So do you want them where you know where they are, so that the police can get to them? Like that would be my thought in my head to say, get him to somewhere where you can say to the police, this guy is here, so he doesn't run.
Yeah. But again, whether or not the police were, because they were involved at this stage,
Yeah.
so whether or not they'd said, look, you can't do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though we'd want to.
We would. Yeah.
So by about 2 a.m, the girls, well, in fact, sorry, even more than that, the girls had even been looking at trains, because there was this potential connection to Manchester, and Matt had mentioned Manchester. They were even like looking at last trains, and they went to the train station, and he didn't come back on the last train. So there'd been all of this, and by 2 o'clock his phone was still off, and that's when his friends said, like, they knew. They knew. His mum had known
for a while,
like 9 o'clock, but they said that at that point they knew.
Yeah.
A lot of them then had work and whatever, and they'd done all they could, but then had to go home and couldn't continue looking.
Yeah.
And unfortunately then at 7:40 the next day, a body was discovered. They didn't initially say that it was Alex, but there was a similar description. And it was actually his dad and his dad's partner, Maxine, that went and identified to confirm that it was, in fact, Alex.
That's awful.
He'd been that badly attacked that Alex's dad actually said, can I see his feet? Because I need to make sure that it's him, because it didn't look anything like him.
My God.
And imagine having to do that to confirm that it was your son. So Alex's dad then confirmed that it was, in fact, the body of Alex. Alex's body had been found in a field, and he'd just been killed and abandoned.
Wow.
It wasn't long before the police then had Matt Mason as their kind of lead suspect.
Yeah.
And he was actually arrested just, I think it was maybe 48 hours after the events. I'll talk to you about the events, and then I'll talk to you about the kind of catalyst that then led to him being arrested. But effectively, from the investigation and at the trial, the thought is that Matt Mason had agreed to see Alex. He'd picked Alex up in his car. He drove to this special place.
Okay.
And Matt Mason then says that they'd had an argument. He says that they'd had an argument and that Alex was the one to initially come at him to try and hit him, and that's when things got out of hand.
Okay.
From what we know about the way that Alex was attacked, which I'll talk about again in a second, that doesn't seem feasible at all, and this goes to show how self-serving Matt was during the whole trial. He never admitted that it was just a calculated attack. He just kind of said, well, it was Alex that started it. It wasn't
so he was
anything
going
to do
self-defense right from the beginning.
Yeah. So he claimed again that the weapon which he had, which was a wrench, probably about this big,
Okay.
that the wrench was just to scare Alex. But again, why
would you take
are
that
you
with you?
scaring him? What do you need to scare him for?
Yeah.
So it didn't make sense. But so it was the 12th of December, and Mason picked Alex up from his home, drove him to this remote area of woodland, and then from the post-mortem, they believe that what had happened is that Alex was actually in a vulnerable position. They believe that he was down on his knees.
Okay.
And at the point in which he was down on his knees, Matt Mason then took the wrench and hit him over the head.
Right, okay.
But hit him over the head and in the chest up to, or at least 15 times.
Right, so if he was on his knees and he's being hit on the head, you're probably going to fall or stumble. So maybe he's fallen backwards, and then that's when he's got the hit on his chest. Yeah.
But again, the post-mortem suggested that just one of those hits with the wrench to the head would have fractured his skull and then actually penetrated his brain. So even just one of those hits would have been enough to kill him.
And again, he carried on.
That's not self-defence.
No, that's definitely not self-defence.
Equally, if Alex was on his knees, that's not them in the middle of an argument.
No, it's not. No.
So none of it made sense at all. Again, when it came to trial, Matt Mason then put on, and it was proven to be kind of put on, a voice. The brother of Alex actually said that he went to every part of the trial, every minute of the trial, because that's what Alex deserved.
Yeah.
But that when Matt first took the stand, he was talking a bit like Forrest Gump. That's what he compared it to, and he kind of. So then the police trawled through all of Matt Mason's social media. Again, social media came into the trial and found that it was a lie. He'd been lying, and he was trying to put on that he wasn't as intelligent as he was. And it was all to try and cover the fact that this was calculated. But even that in itself is calculated.
Yeah.
So it's very counterintuitive. So they then believe that Matt Mason had left the scene, went to clean himself up again at a friend's house, another farm, and then had gone to the pub and met his friends at the pub for an alibi, which again then lines up with when he spoke to Lisa.
Because he was already in the pub.
Because then he said, "Oh, I'm just at the pub, I can come down." But he then took a selfie to prove that he was in the pub, and then took another selfie and sent it to his girlfriend, topless in bed, to give him an alibi for being at home.
So he was very, very, very calculated. From start to finish, he was fully calculated. The whole thing was calculated.
Yeah. And what he then actually did is get back out of bed and return to the scene of the crime. And he returned to the scene of the crime to try and make sure that Alex was dead and then tidy up, effectively, and clean up his actions. But what Matt Mason didn't consider is that Alex was 6'2", and when you have killed someone, it's a lot more difficult
to move them.
Yeah. So he actually had tried to move Alex and couldn't, and so had just had to leave him and gave up. So had just abandoned him there.
Right.
There's also reason to believe that when Matt had killed him, he'd just stood and had a cigarette over his body. Potentially even while he was still alive. So
I'm actually for the people who are like watching, you can see our reactions to this, but
yeah,
like that is
horrendous.
That is absolutely horrendous. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the thing that I mentioned that ended up getting him caught effectively was that a witness had actually taken a photo of his Renault Clio parked on this track.
Okay.
Because it had obviously happened kind of in the middle of a field, but then he tried to move him further onto this track and not.
So did he take a picture when he went back to the crime scene or when he was there the first time?
When he'd gone back,
right?
I believe.
Okay.
And then reported it to the police, and at that point he was identified as the owner and then arrested the next day.
Right.
So it all did happen pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But in terms of being arrested, they actually found him on the A41 in Staffordshire, and it was a T-Pack stop.
Right.
So you know when it's like a tactical.
Yeah, so they have a car at the front that slows them down. They have one at the side, one at the back, and they sort of like box the car in, don't they, and try and bring it to like a safe stop. So
he'd obviously realised that a body had been found and then just drove over towards Staffordshire. At that point, when they'd stopped the car, obviously they were telling him to get out of the car with his hands up.
Yeah.
And he just didn't do anything. He didn't give himself up. He just sat in the car. And the police ended up having to break the car window and drag him out of the car.
Right.
They then found in the car the weapon
that
he'd not disposed of and Alex's coat. So it was pretty clear that he was the offender.
Yeah.
Again, I've mentioned that he tried to play the jury. He never admitted it. And Molly, one of his friends, actually gave testimony, and she said she wanted him to know how much he'd affected not only the lives of Alex's family, but also the wider circle, like
his
their
friends as
and
well,
everyone else. And she said there was nothing. It was just like dark behind the eyes. He'd got no remorse, it didn't seem. And they then found, again, as further evidence, that he'd done internet searches. So again, the social media, but then internet searches in themselves. He'd searched phrases including what would happen if you kicked someone down the stairs, everyday poison, the mysteries of Cheshire, unsolved deaths of missing people. So again, you can see here that it wasn't just a self-defense, spontaneous
it was definitely
attack.
Premeditated.
It was calculated. And the verdict actually came just 2 days after the trial had ended. And the Detective Inspector Nigel Reed actually said that Mason had murder on his mind, which makes sense. Yeah. He drove Alex to his death under the pretense of sexual activity. Yep. He'd specifically chosen a secluded place to kill him in cold blood, and it was a place that he believed would go unseen and undetected. The judge actually said that although he accepted that Alex Rodda may well have initiated contact with the latter half of 2019, I'm sure that you not only responded, but actively encouraged a sexual relationship.
Yeah.
You groomed him. Yep. He said, Matt Mason, you groomed him, and it was not your first sexual experience, but it was his.
Yeah.
And he said that while it's clear that Alex was naive, as the judge saw it, he had given him money, and that it had all come about because of your sexual offering and you chose to behave that way.
Yeah.
Again, the judge described it as being premeditated, carefully planned and ruthlessly carried out, and that you were just hoping, Matt Mason was hoping that he would hide the body and make it look like he'd decided to disappear. Mm. So it's horrendous, and I wanted to spend more time talking about Alex and his death, because he lived such a big life. And his mum actually said that in the short time that he was alive, he was free, and that's incredible. And it also shows the power of friendship. A lot of the kind of evidence came from all of the work that the girls had done in terms of, tracking his social media and posts and things like that, and evidence that they could then use, and how quickly they, helped speed things along in the search for their friend. Yeah. So his dad said that he was a beautiful, lovely boy, and that he was free. And I think that's what we need to remember.
Remember from this one. Yeah.
But effectively, he was punished for someone else's shame. Yeah. Matt Mason wasn't mature enough, despite being an adult.
And took it out on Alex, didn't he? Yeah. Ultimately. Yeah.
So that's the case of the murder of Alex Rodda. And if you want any more information on that, there's a lot of different resource out there.
We'll pop a few links in the description as well for both of these. So if you do want to listen or watch anything in more detail, then we'll give you all the links for those.
But we're now going to talk about a case which is in an American case.
We are, yeah. So we've mentioned a few times that we've got American listeners, so we will be covering some sort of American cases now as well going forward. So mine is from the TikTok Murder Gone Viral documentary, and this is about a lady called Sania Khan, and she was killed on the 18th of July 2022. So she was a Pakistani American lady, and she was killed after sharing her divorce experience on TikTok. So these TikTok videos about her divorce did actually go viral, and that was one of the main catalysts for what happened to her, which is really, really sad, because she thought she was sharing not only for herself, but sharing to help others as well.
Raise awareness.
She really wanted to raise awareness around the subject of divorce in particular. So Sania was born in 1993 in her hometown of Chattanooga, and that is in Tennessee. So she graduated from Chattanooga School for the Arts and Sciences. She was actually quite clever. And she went to university. She actually graduated from the University of Tennessee, where she double majored in psychology and women's studies. Wow. So that was in 2015. So I feel like she was quite independent already. She knew what she wanted to do. And all her friends had said, like, she was such an amazing person. She was always happy. She wanted to help people.
Yeah, it sounds like she had a lot of drive to like achieve from an early age.
And she had like a lot of passion for what she wanted to do as well. She actually had a passion for photography, which she started doing when she was, I think when she'd graduated. She sort of picked up a camera, and there was videos of her saying, when I picked up my first camera, it changed my life. And I had a look at some of her photography work online, and it was really, really good.
Yeah, it was funny, isn't it? Because everyone said she liked being behind the camera taking photos. Yeah. But she was gorgeous as well, wasn't she?
She was,
It was one of those where she was good in front of and behind the camera.
So she'd sort of got her degree, and then sort of had this passion for photography as well. And I feel like it was a bit of a, which way do you go down? Do you go for something that you're passionate about? And I feel like it really portrayed on social media and on her videos, like how much she did have that passion for photography.
Yes.
And she'd started doing like weddings, engagements, baby showers, and her pictures were all absolutely stunning of her and of the people she'd been photographing.
Yeah, they were all quite portraiture based, weren't they? They were all like people and events.
They were. And she actually met Raheel, who later became her husband, on Tinder. And she said that she did the same, like we've just said, you go to your friends, don't you? Look at this person that I've just met. And he was going to medical school. He was the same age as her. He was nice looking. And she was like, wow.
Yeah.
I have just sort of fallen on my feet here. He shared all the same like cultural things as her, all the same beliefs.
And that's incredibly important as well.
Yeah, and she said, as a Pakistani woman, to meet someone like that and to be able to bring them home to your family, and they are doing the medical degree, they have a good family around them, all of that was such a big factor in her finding someone to just fit in with her culture.
Yeah, massive plus.
Yeah, so he is at this point just ticking all the boxes, and she said he just sounded perfect on paper.
I think the one thing that's kind of a bit tricky sometimes when it all seems to align really nicely, and it's ticking on the boxes, it's someone that'd be good for you. The problem then, I think, well, is it a problem? I don't know. But it seems to then all happen a lot more quickly.
Yes.
When you're kind of figuring each other out, sometimes it's a lot easier to go slowly.
Yeah.
And it is good to go slowly because then you know whether or not it's right.
Yeah.
When everything is looking
seems perfect.
Good.
You just rush into it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you just go, right, well, this is good. So we don't need to think about it because everything's going well.
Absolutely. And they were actually together for about 5 years. And her friends said that Sania kept saying, when are we going to get married? When are we going to get engaged? Mm-hmm. And Raheel was saying, well, when I've finished my medical degree, when I've finished this, when I've done this, and to say that they were, she'd just come out of studying and he was still studying. They were fairly young. But they said it was almost like he kept saying, when this happens, I will then propose to you.
Goalposts.
Yeah. And he was moving it further and further away, and I think she was sort of getting a little bit frustrated at 5 years and we're not even engaged.
Yeah.
And they married in 2021 and they had a very big, lavish ceremony. Mm-hmm. Her mum actually said it was sort of like the talk of the town. She was quite stressed out planning her wedding because it was so
and after that length
big
of time as well.
Yeah, and I'm guessing there's a lot of pressure on on you for like the family, and she said she wanted it to be perfect. She wanted the family to come to the wedding and be like, wow, look at this.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
it's
also
perfect.
being a photographer of things like engagements and weddings, you see all of this beauty.
Yeah.
And she probably wanted to have bigger and better for herself, for her own experience.
Yeah, so she actually got married in Atlanta, and I saw videos of the ceremony, and it did look absolutely beautiful. There was like flowers all over. Her dress was unbelievable. She'd done like videos of when she was ready there, and she got this like red, absolutely beautiful red and gold dress on. She looked stunning. She'd done TikTok videos on it, and I just looked and you thought, wow, like she looked really happy in herself, and you just think, you know, the ceremony was absolutely beautiful.
That's interesting. So she was doing TikTok videos before, because I've kind of seen the ones that were divorce related.
Yeah, so she was doing TikTok videos, but it was like she'd done a video that said, oh, how I felt when I first picked up my first camera. Okay. And she was on the video and she'd like got the camera pointing at the camera.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
But she was already
so she was
TikToking.
doing TikTok content, as in her own content for photography.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't think she'd got a massive following at this point. It was just putting stuff on about shoots and, you know, what she'd been doing, what she'd been up to, and her sort of work and her creative work at this point.
Yeah.
So Raheel actually got mad at the wedding, and this was sort of like a first warning sign for some of the people that saw this.
Massive red flag.
Well, to get
bit
mad
late
at the wedding,
stage, unfortunately, but.
So in the South Asian community, the groom has a sword at the wedding. Okay. And I did actually see the videos, and he'd got like a sword tucked away.
Yeah.
And at one point I think it was something to do with the seating arrangement, something to do with, Raheel was meant to be sat with the father of the bride and the uncle, but there'd been a bit of a argument between the uncle and something had been moved around. And Raheel had got his sword out, and he was jabbing it, like banging it into the floor at the wedding. So at this point, Sania's mom was like, this is a bit weird, what's happening?
Yeah.
And then Sania actually confided in her mom and said, he has, you know, got some sort of mental issues and he cannot control his anger.
Right, okay.
So it wasn't until that point that it was brought to light.
Yeah. But then that means that she's familiar with dealing with potential mental health issues.
Yeah.
And that it's based, or at least part of it is based in anger. And she's familiar with that.
Yeah. So then I think the mom at this point was like, wow, that's quite a lot to take in, because the Sania's mother had actually divorced from Sania's father.
Right.
And she said that the community had not been the most supportive around the subject for her as a woman, as a Pakistani woman who had got a divorce.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that the whole situation in general, that a mom just wanted her to find someone, to be happy with someone. But then when she brought up that he was actually quite mentally unstable, that would ring alarm bells straight away. So after the wedding, Raheel and Sania actually moved to Chicago, where Raheel carried on studying for his medical degree, and Sania carried on with her photography.
And a lot of people, when doing a medical degree as well, that's a big emotional toll, and I feel like some people thrive in that and do incredibly well, but and for those that already are maybe struggling, then that can sometimes be the worst thing to be focused on, because it becomes all consuming. Yeah. But then you treat other people like you've not got time for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So her friends said that they did notice a change, you know, when she moved to Chicago, and she wasn't as openly herself. She wasn't doing a lot of the things that she loved as much. It was more, she became a little bit more closed off. So then in December, so December the 7th, 2021, within the same year as them getting married, the police actually attended a disturbance at the couple's flat. There was body cam footage of this if you watch the documentary, and it was quite horrendous to watch in general. So the police come into the flat, and you see them stood outside in sort of the corridor area, and they knock on the door, and Sania shouts, "The door's unlocked. Come in." And she's shouting, you can see like she's distressed. And when the police walk into the flat, Raheel is stood there and he's got no top on. He's just got some tracksuit bottoms on. But she is on the floor and she's holding on to one of his legs.
God.
And she's very, very worried. She's distressed. It's like...
Do we know who made the call? Was it like neighbours or was it...
I think it was one of the neighbours because a little bit later on, the neighbours do come into play a little bit.
Right, okay.
So I think with it being such a disturbance, it probably will have been the neighbours. So she actually tells the police that Raheel is depressed, that he's on medication, and that the next day they were actually due to go and see someone.
Okay.
So she was like, we are trying to get help, but he is on medication.
Yeah.
But he was actually depressed due to the stress of medical school, which you've just said some people thrive in that environment.
Yeah.
He wasn't actually getting the grades and he had gone really depressed from that. He was on antidepressants and he had attempted to kill himself and take her with him. So they were on, I think it was the 20th or the 21st floor. I think it was the 20th floor of the apartment block, so it was huge. And he had tried to throw himself out of the window, but holding on to Sania as well.
Jesus.
So that must have been so scary for her to not only see your husband in that state and to see how bad he was doing, but also for him to try and kill her as well in that situation.
Living in fright, wouldn't you? Because there's the constant fear of them, doing something to themselves. Like she probably wouldn't be able to sleep because she'd be worried that he'd then, while she was asleep, then he'd take his life.
Yeah.
And then equally you've got that on top where he's not at a stage where it's just him wanting to end his life. He's at a point in which he wants her to also be dead.
Which is very, very, very dangerous situation to be in. He was actually taken to hospital and received inpatient treatment for 3 weeks. So they actually kept him in hospital, which is probably what they would do in that situation when you are in crisis.
So, I don't know about in America, but they're actually, because there are so many people in serious mental health states, there's actually not enough beds a lot of the time.
Right.
And so it's actually a lot more difficult than you would think to receive treatment then and there. So for him to have actually been kept as an inpatient from the off...
Shows how bad it was.
That shows how bad it was,
Yeah, definitely. So while Raheel was having his treatment... Sania decided to go and visit him and she was allowed some visitation to him. But while she was there, he actually told her that he'd been cheating on her before the wedding as well.
Right.
He also said that he lied about his age.
Okay.
So when you match with someone on Tinder, you match you can see the age.
Yeah.
He had actually said he was the same age as Sania, but he wasn't. He was 8 years older.
Right, okay.
So there was an 8-year difference, and she'd said, I wouldn't have dated him if I knew he was 8 years older than me. I mean, he didn't look...
Which is why people lie about it.
When you see pictures of them together, I wouldn't have thought there was any massive age difference. They could have passed for probably being that age. He also made a fake profile on Tinder of Sania and said that she was interested in women, and he spoke to other women as her.
What?
Yes, exactly. Like, it is crazy. And Sania had then gone and spoke to her friends about this. Her friends had said, this is crazy.
I just can't work out what he'd gain from that.
Yeah,
like,
what
is
are
that
you gaining?
so that you can speak to other women in general, but then you might as well just set up your own profile.
Yeah.
Like, it just
and I mean, he wasn't when you see the pictures of them together, he wasn't a bad looking guy. There wasn't anything about him that women would not want to talk. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it's not like there was...
No, he needed to, like, catfish.
Catfish, yeah. So after all this, Sania was like, this is too much.
Yeah.
This is actually crazy. She spoke to her friends about it and she actually filed for divorce in the February after. So this happened in December and then by February she'd filed for divorce.
Brave. That's incredibly brave because yes, you've gone through all of this and there's a lot of it that's, unsettling.
Yeah.
But it's massive for her to have made that decision.
Yeah. And she remained in Chicago because she liked it there. So she kept the apartment that they had both had together.
Yeah.
And Raheel actually moved to Georgia, which was where his family was.
Right.
So he was the one to move away. And I think at first it seemed fairly peaceful. She was worried about the backlash she was going to get because she'd seen a mum go through a divorce, and within her community she knew it wasn't going to be favoured, but she came to her mum and she said, this is what I want to do, and her mum supported her through this, and she had a sister as well, and her sister was very supportive.
That's what I mean in terms of like it was brave, not only because if he's in a vulnerable but also dangerous place, you don't want to rock the boat there, and you know, saying that you want to divorce him is going to rock the boat big time. But then equally, from what we've already talked about with the culture, it is a big risk to take.
Yeah, definitely. So after the divorce proceedings had started, Sania started to share her experience through TikTok videos. So she was already posted about photography, and then she just added in like things about a divorce, like about getting out of a toxic with a domestically violent relationship, and she shared some of the stuff that she'd been through, shared a lot about her community, how she didn't have the support, and a lot of people related to her, and there was women from like all different backgrounds that was commenting, you know, all giving her support. It was sort of like she was starting a bit of like a community, and giving other people hope and support that they could get out of those relationships.
And just voicing it, I think for a lot of people, just to know that there are other people and they're not alone is massive in that circumstance. Again, even if it's not culture that maybe has been the difficulty, it might be that you've not got a supportive family, and then you can resonate with...
She just wanted to help other women in the same situation. So she discussed it all. She talked about the South Asian community, how some of her own family members disagreed with her decision. So she was very, very open about it. And she had about 20,000 followers on her TikTok account, and her videos had actually reached millions.
Wow.
Although she did get quite a lot of criticism in general. So she ended up setting up a second backup TikTok account where she could post what she wanted to post, as in like wear what she wanted to wear. And from looking at her videos, I would say by no means did she dress provocatively or anything like that, but she was wearing stuff that her community wouldn't have like approved of. She was sort of showing her figure.
Isn't it crazy that you have to, like we've just said, like, oh, she was getting a lot of hate. It's as if like that is just part and parcel of
and it shouldn't be
social media, but it shouldn't be, no.
So when she was going through the divorce, she actually did everything she should have done. She got a restraining order. She changed the locks on the flats, on the flat that she had, because obviously he knew where she was. So I feel like it was probably a little bit naive of her to think that these videos that were going viral wouldn't reach Raheel at some point.
Because
even his family wouldn't see and show.
Even if it's not him that's come across them, you know, it'll be someone in common. Like even at work or whatever, they might be like, "Isn't this who you were married to?"
So then if we move on to July the 17th, 2022, her best friend, Gabriella, had said, right, why don't you come back home? We will get a flat together. Let's live together. Let's literally live our best life. And she was like, yeah, I'm down for that.
Amazing.
Let's do it. So she'd actually decided that Gabriella was going to fly to Sania and pack up with her. And then they were going to drive back together with all the stuff. And they picked out a house together. They knew where they were going to live. It was back home in Chattanooga. And they were sending voice notes to each other, and they were saying how excited they were. And there's even like the actual videos of her saying, I'm so excited, I can't pack.
See, that gives me goosebumps. It's always like other people's connections, do you know what I mean?
So on this day, Raheel would have known from social media that it was Sania's last day on her own in this apartment, and that she was planning on coming home because she was quite open about it. At this point, Raheel decides to tell his family he is off hiking with friends.
I was going to say, because he lives nowhere near now, does he?
No. So he says to his family he's off hiking with friends, and his family don't really think anything of it because he's now on medication at this point. And they feel like he is doing better.
He seems more stable.
They just think, oh, that's probably good that he's going out hiking with friends. So they didn't really worry about him. So that's on the 17th of July. But then on the 18th of July, Gabriella gets on a flight to Chicago. This is the big day where she's going to meet Sania. They're going to bring her home, and, you know, this is what they've all been looking forward to. So when she landed in Chicago, she said she knew that Sania lived in the main part of like downtown Chicago, and she knew she needed to get a train when she got off the flight. So she got on the train, and then she started texting saying, you know, what's your exact address and stuff like that. And Sania wasn't replying, and Gabriella said it is very, very strange. So her friends and her mom, Sania's mom was called Shazia, were messaging and getting no reply, which when someone is so active on social media, they were thinking this is weird. It's the day that we've all been looking forward to.
Well, exactly that, and the fact that like if you know your mate's about to arrive, not just like coming like in car from around the corner, actually getting off a flight to get to you, you're going to be checking your phone to make sure that they're on time or if there's been any delays. Or...
Yeah, exactly. So Sania's mom and her sister Eman were messaging as well and getting no reply. And then Gabriella gets a message from Eman, which is Sania's sister, saying, do you have Rahil's phone number or Sania's Chicago address? It's an emergency. So everyone at this point is confused why people are mentioning Rahil. They're going through a divorce. Why should he even be in the picture? Like, he shouldn't even be around. And Eman actually says on the documentary, when they first couldn't get in touch with her, that she thought her mum was over-exaggerating. Her mum's really protective of him. And she was like, oh, she's being a bit overprotective here. Yeah. But then Sania's mum actually rang 911 and said, my daughter is missing. I can't get in touch with her. I've not heard from her. And then at the same time, Rahil's sister noticed that he had stopped sharing his location on Find My Friends.
Right, okay.
So she looked and thought, well, why would he have turned that off? It's a bit of a weird time to turn it off.
If you're hiking, if anything, you need to leave it on, don't you?
Yeah, because in case anything happens. And it turns out that Rahil had actually travelled over to Chicago. He had a backpack with a gun in it, and he had a bag with Sania's wedding dress in. So the drive from Georgia to Chicago is actually quite a long way. So we had a long time to think about it. Yeah. At this point, the police had gone to do a welfare check at Sania's apartment.
Right.
They had gone in there and they had found her dead in the apartment. Okay. At this point, neighbours... So this is where the neighbours come in. Sania's neighbours have then sent a message to Gabriella.
Right.
And said, like, oh, we're sorry for your loss. Like, so they were like, what the hell? Anyway, Sania's dad actually rang Gabriella and said, you know, she
wasn't
has
that all
been
while she was
shot.
on the train as well, wasn't it?
She was still travelling,
Oh.
And she said she had to get off. At this point, she was on a bus, so she got on the train and she was like counting down to the next stop, like, oh my God, this is not real. And she got off the bus and she said she was that much of a state at the side of the road. Cars were stopping, like, what is happening? Like, it was absolutely horrendous. So, Sania Khan was actually found dead in her Chicago apartment that she used to share with Rahil, and CCTV captured Rahil walking through the reception of the apartment at 9:30 that morning. He actually met with a letting agent as if he was getting shown around somewhere, and he went up in the lift and he had got out of the lift with the letting agent. He had got a backpack on, he'd got like a dress bag with her dress in it, and at the end of the meeting, he said to the letting agent, I've got friends in the apartment block, so I'm going to stay here. Like, I'm not going to come back out with you. I'm going to stay and visit my friends. Yeah. And then it shows him getting into the lift, and he then swapped his backpack from the back to the front of him. Right. And that was where the gun was, so they think it was for easy access. And he gets out on the 20th floor, which is obviously...
Oh, that's horrific.
The apartment that he used to share with Sania.
So like... Again, obviously premeditated, like you've just said, the journey, you know, having a gun, having her dress, which is odd. Yeah. But then having this meeting with the estate agent, like it's all just very...
It's all very weird and planned,
but it's also very odd.
So as well as Sania's mum ringing the police, Rahil's sister actually got a message from him that she found really strange, and it said something about paying the family back for the tuition money for him been doing his medical degree.
Yeah.
And she was like, that's really strange. So she tried to ring him, couldn't get in touch with him. So she rang the police and said, look, he's been mentally unstable. And the police actually pinged his location on his phone.
Yeah.
And it came up within 200 metres of their flat that they used to share.
Wow.
So then obviously that's when the police they'd got the call about the welfare check on her.
Yeah.
And then they got there. And when they got to the door of the apartment, there was a gunshot. And you can clearly hear it on the body cam. So the police get to outside the apartment.
Okay. Right.
They're ready to just go in.
Yeah.
And you can just hear a pop.
Okay.
And the police officer's like, was that what I thought it was? And it was a gunshot.
Right.
And that was later found out that the gunshot was Raheel killing himself.
Gosh.
So he went in there, he killed Sania.
Again, she'd have probably opened the door thinking it was Gabriella.
Yeah.
And
then he had killed himself, so he committed suicide, and he was actually pronounced dead at the hospital. Raheel did leave a suicide note that I just want to read out. I'd come to give her the wedding dress and the gun for safety since she was living in Chicago by herself. She and I had a good time together and we laughed, and for dramatic effect, to convince her to get back together with me, I put the gun to my head and I said, what's the point in living without you? She tried to take the gun away from me and it went off. I can't live with myself knowing me being here caused this accident. I'm so sorry. I just, in that, I just feel for her and for her family in that situation, how scared she must have been. And her friends said actually that Raheel did say all the time, if you left me, I would kill myself. I'd do this, I'd do that. It was emotional abuse constantly with him saying he was going to kill himself, he was going to do something to himself, he didn't want to live without her.
And saying, we don't, there's so much wrong with that letter, but saying that you're giving it her for safety, would you not have done that earlier on? Do you know what I mean? Or
why would you drive all that way?
You have to physically deliver it, is it?
Yeah.
No, it's horrendous.
So in the thing that they didn't really know about is in the bag was the wedding dress. Why did he bring the wedding dress? And there was some people that worked on the case that said, was it like a token that he wanted her to wear when he killed her, he wanted her to dress in it for him. But we'll actually never know that. So there's literally no justice for the family in this case because he'd killed himself. So the family was so angry and frustrated, but her videos kept going viral even after her death. So she's still making a massive impact on the South Asian community and especially the women. And what I found really nice is all her friends had got matching tattoos. So Sania actually had a tattoo which was the number 28 in Roman numerals.
Right.
Because that was going to be her year.
Okay.
So everything had just happened. She'd divorced, she'd whatever.
Yeah.
That was the worst year for her and it was done with. And it was a closure thing.
Yeah.
And all of her friends got the same tattoo that said 28 in the Roman numerals except Gabriella, who got 29 because that was going to be their year. I know. I was just so they all got matching. But she said that was going to be our year where we had chose the house we wanted. We were going to be living together. She was finally going to be back home with her family, and that was what she wanted to do. So,
and again, I think the only thing that you can kind of cling to in these situations, it's like Alex's mum Lisa when she said that Alex was free in the time that he lived, he was free and he was happy.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to take from it. And equally in this case, you've just got to think that, she was so excited to be starting this new chapter and everything was positive and she'd got herself out of that situation. She was strong and she'd got the support.
And she helped so many people and she still continues to help people even after her death.
Yeah.
And to not have that strong community around her and
to form your own,
not be bothered, because I'm sure it did bother her what people in the community thought about her and what her family members thought about her, but to speak out about that is so brave. And to even leave Raheel in the first place, because we always say that domestic violence, the most dangerous time is when the victim is going to leave. and that increases the chance of domestic violence by hundreds of percentage. Like
it's horrendous.
It's crazy, and if you're pregnant, then that's even worse. So I just feel like the whole way through this, she was really brave, and she was just sort of coming into herself herself in general. So yeah, it's nice that she's still having an impact on other people, though.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for listening. As we've mentioned, you know, those two cases are very different.
Yeah.
But in one case, a lot of the social media became the evidence.
Yeah.
And in the other case, it was a positive element of social media. But then equally, that is effectively how
What
her
led
ex
to
found
her death, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully we've given you a good insight there. Thank you so much for listening again. If there's any information that you want to find out for yourselves, you know, you can Google, watch some of the TikTok videos that Sania created.
Some of the documentaries.
And I think we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think so too.
So thank you for listening.
And we will see you next week.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Take care.